Hi guys, and welcome to my series where I learned to graffiti as pretty much a beginner. I have done a bit of like graffiti before, but not very well, just messing around with friends. And then one other time I did like a stencil and a throw up. And I've also done a bit of like wheat paste and sticker bombing as well. But this time I'm gonna try and do it properly. Between all these projects, I've ended up with like a bunch of spray paint cans that are just gathering dust pretty much, so I want to put them to good use. So I've always been pretty interested in street art and graffiti, more so in the sort of graphic, murally sort of stuff, but I've become more and more interested in tagging by noticing the same artist names repeating over and over around town. The rivalries, the political messages, and the ones where you just sort of question like how they did it. So I've started to appreciate tagging as its own art form, sort of getting your tag into strange places and becoming a recognised name. And I'm also really into this idea of like reclaiming the streets and adding a bit of colour and humour like into your surroundings. So I sort of want to explore that a bit, maybe even become a part of it, and also just sort of improve my skills with a can. So I've got my spray cans, but I'm also going to try and make a mop, which is sort of like a paint pen. I've seen a lot of other painters do this and I love how drippy it looks, so I want to give it a go. So I'm going to do it two different ways. I wasn't expecting to find like this shoe polish thing, but there's a way to make a mop out of that. And then I'm also going to do a mop sort of using like this bottle that was used for like travel shampoo, but you can probably also use like a hand sanitizer. And I just found like this random fabric in Poundland, which happened to come with like, this is all I could find genuinely, but it comes with like a little elf. But we're gonna cut this up and then shove it in there to make our own sort of mop. There we go. Other sort of supplies that I'm using. So I've got this paint that I also found in Poundland. It's really cheap. It doesn't even say if it's like oil or acrylic or water-based. And then I have some rubbing alcohol just to thin the paint down. It sort of took me a while to figure out what would work with this paint, because it was like unnamed, but yeah, you can sort of just experiment with like different solvents and see, well, be careful, but you can experiment with different solvents and see what works within your paint, because different solvents work with like different kinds of paint. We've also got a jar for some mixing and a paintbrush. So yeah, I'm going to start by thinning down our paint, which I think is acrylic. Okay, so making the ink. I want mine to be green, so I've just sort of grabbed like all the green tones, but then also like the blue and yellow. I'm just going to mix it up in this jar. Oh, I really like that colour. Honestly, I kind of like that colour as it is, so I might just see like how much paint that makes me. And I'm just going to sort of like eyeball it pretty much. Yeah, so that's already looking like all right. I really like the colour and I think it's like the right consistency, but we need more of it, so I'm going to add a bit more paint. So here we are, we've got a bit more paint, and I'm liking the colour, but the yellow didn't like fully mix in and dissolve, so I'm just going to put it on the side, and hopefully it sort of melts. I don't know, we'll see. So with the shoe polish mop, we're just going to take this thing off and empty out the ink and replace it with our own ink. And it just sort of like twists off. So I ended up using all the ink for that mop, so I'm going to make a bit more for the second one. But if we put this back on, then we've got our first mop, I think. Yeah, so that should work, hopefully. So I think maybe the alcohol was like a wrong choice for the solvent or something, because it's not coming out as pigmented as I wanted it to. But we'll see later just how it turns out when I put it on a wall. And I guess for the second mop that I make, I'll just make sure to use like more paint. If you've got any tips for making the ink, then please do let me know in the comments. But yeah, we'll move on to the second one, and yeah, just more paint, I guess. I mean, the other thing could be that I've noticed when I've used like different sorts of paints for like other projects, it's always the green. Like when the paint is cheap, it's always the green that's like the least pigmented. It's normally like really watery, so it might be that. But I have a feeling it's the alcohol that was the wrong thing to use. So my phone died while I was filming, but in the meantime, I've just mixed up some blue ink. And then I've also gone and cut that like elf thing. We just need a bit of fabric. And I'm also pretty sure that you could just use like a sponge or something for the same purpose. But now we're gonna fill this up with our ink. Okay, and then we're just gonna like fold this up to make the head of the mop. And then just like fold it in half like that. And shove it in. Alright, and then that's our second mop. I've got a feeling this one's going to be a bit more of a liability. It just looks like it's going to be kind of messy. Yeah. Okay, that's not too bad. Plus, I've realised that this paper is sort of like plastified, so that might be why it looks a little bit funny. But yeah, that's not too bad. Alright, so now we've got these two mops. I'm just gonna find a place to paint. So, as expected, the first mop didn't work too well. To be fair, the medium was part of the problem, as it was kind of tricky to paint on a porous brick wall, but as you can see, it wasn't great on smooth surfaces either. But this is how it looks in the daytime, sort of not great. The second mop works a lot better, but I'm watching this back and I am so sorry to the people that I painted over. I was so nervous about getting caught that I didn't realise how little space I had, so I really hope that that sticker wasn't hand-drawn because I feel pretty bad. And yeah, I know my letters look pretty shit. I sort of embarrassed myself, not gonna lie, but it's my first try, so we'll see how I improve. I really like how drippy this one turned out. Yeah, and this was the worst one. I don't know really what happened here, but look at how delicately I placed that full stop. So those are our mops. Overall, this one painted a little bit better, but obviously it was like super messy. I had to carry it around in this bag because the lid wouldn't fit back on now that the nib's in there. But yeah, it painted a bit better. The other thing is that the nib sort of ripped on like a brick wall, but this one seemed to be okay. And yeah, this one, I don't know, it didn't work too well, but I have a feeling that's because of the ink that I used rather than anything else. So I'll just try it with some different ink. The other option is like I could just buy like a mop for probably the same price as what it cost to put all of this together. But I wanted to just try it out like the DIY way. And I'll probably experiment a little bit more. But yeah, those were our mops. Next, it was time to try out the cans. So I headed to this creepy tunnel on the edge of town that's basically a free zone for graffiti artists. It was pretty deserted aside from the odd cyclist, which is both good and bad because I'm a bit of a wimp. But there were lots of really cool pieces in here, although it made my attempts feel a little bit pathetic in comparison. But I'll get there. There was so much art that it was kind of hard to find a space. My first go was a bit terrible because, again, I got nervous and sort of rushed things, so just needed to slow down. So the reason I'm writing moss is obviously it's my name online and it has been for a while, but I also thought it'd be pretty funny to have stuff written on the walls in green that looks like moss or lichen. Plus my favourite colour is green and I'm all about outdoorsy stuff. Also, one thing when I first tried this a few years ago was I couldn't figure out how to use a new can. I thought it was jammed or something at first, but it was just because I hadn't taken the safety off. It took me so long to figure out and I was just sort of standing there surrounded by my bags of incriminating evidence, looking at my phone trying to find a tutorial on how to get it to work. But literally all you have to do is turn the can upside down and then it comes off. I also tried out the mops again, but on these old brick walls it wasn't really worth it. Then I walked around a bit because it's a really nice area and I tagged a few lampposts. I'm not sure if it was the cap or the angle, but it sprayed a bit wide and it looked a bit dodgy. But on my way home I saw this tag which made me feel a little bit better about things. So yeah, first few tags. I think I need to do a bit more research into different styles and practice a bit more so it flows a bit better. But let me know what you think. I know I'm just a toy and I'll have probably pissed off some of the older graffiti painters, but it's all just fun and games and I am trying to learn. So drop any suggestions in the comments and give me a follow or subscribe if you want to see more.